looking to order.
I'm looking for it. Are you recording this?
Yes. Is that playing?
No, it's not.
We do a roll
There
call.
you go.
Start with Cheryl.
Cheryl Sandler, alternate.
Bob member.
Terry Waite, member.
Ray Kachasky, member.
Cindy Picos, member. Wendy
It's just gonna play.
Harry Dodowitz, alternate. Review and acceptance of the minutes of February 13th, 2015.
Wrong, Jerry.
You're on, Terry. Page 2, Terry.
Page 2. Gary's already there.
Well, I didn't find it.
Was there someone else you
Gary
seated
did.
beside? Somebody, Wendy for somebody? Just Wendy?
Just one. Bill's a select woman, we don't see, he's
Don't
an ex
worry about it.
officio.
Yeah, I knew. Is it just?
That's 'cause Harry
Is
read
it
it.
just grammar?
Yeah, it's grammar,
Yeah.
but it's sort of a word left out there.
Yes, I saw that. I wasn't
There's
gonna bring
another
that
one.
up 'cause
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead, tell us.
Highlighter right there.
Go ahead, Terry, you take it.
On page 2, the second sentence, it's just the pedestrian road study supports, you should say, the master plans, blank, of the dense town center, vision, concept.
No, Terry?
I can have interpretation.
Have my red pen.
Trying to clean it up.
Yeah. Turn over a new leaf.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed. New business. Okay, we'll discuss the Hockey Academy housing and classroom facilities.
Desperately needed. I don't know what I can contribute.
I'm not
You
sure
know,
what-
we had talked about possibly building a dorm for 'em on our land, but the zoning special civic was changed 10, 15 years ago, which prohibits us from doing that now. I can tell you that without hockey, we'd be out of business. 75 cents on every dollar that the predicament that they're in. You know, maybe Chris can answer to their housing in the town square. But it just seems to be a kind of a little volatile situation on if they aren't allowed back in town square. What happens to them? Where do they go? So, I was just here more as a spectator to see what the plans were for them. I know that there are 2 lodges that, well, one lodge in particular that's for sale, but it's just too much money right now. They're asking too much.
There. Is it North Star, Tom?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
They're just asking too much money. I think so.
What about the Birches? Who owns that and what is that?
Yeah, no, that's a time sharing spot, and they have a lot of weeks people use them. It's very successful, 24 rooms. And these guys need, 24 rooms from September 1st till mid-March.
Now, I heard that
Tom, is there a problem? Is there an anticipation of a problem at the town square, or it's
No,
not
I mean,
feasible,
Chris-
or?
I mean, Chris can answer that. I don't know, but it's just an up in the air thing. Maybe Chris, I'm sure can answer.
one more question.
The academy's situation on their housing. They want to grow, and town square is limited with what they can do, and we're just.
Off the top of my head, is they had 5 units in town square this year. They'd love to take all 7. It becomes a little difficult with housing, but I think we're trying to work all that out. I think right now our only sticking point with them is on pricing, because energy costs were so through the roof this year. So they'll definitely be back in town square. It's just a matter of whether they have 5, 6, or 7 units. But I don't think my My understanding when I talked to them is where they weren't leaving town
How
square.
many people in a unit, Chris?
There were about seven.
6 or 7, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, 6 in some, 7 in others, depending on the size, but I think it was 6 or 7.
And how many need to be accommodated?
Dollars per kid. It doesn't fly. So Town Square is limited with what they can do. So they're limited at this point with their growth.
I think we had about 34 kids, something like that, this year in those units. The second team, which we were going to try to house, was over there. They'd
Yeah.
like to keep both teams all together, all in town square, but I just don't see how that's possible. I mean, you know, if they wanted to pay for it, of course, but at some point, it's probably similar to the problem there.
Yeah, let me, I don't know if this is, but the wording for Special Civic, when we purchased the land from Waterville Company by the athletic club, allowed us to kind of do anything and build a dorm, build whatever. And I thought that was still the wording when we had talked with the hockey academy about building a dorm on our land. And we found out that the wording had been changed 15 years ago or something, which prohibited that. So our question is, are we grandfathered? Or is that spot zoning? If were we grandfathered? Are we grandfathered with being able to build a dorm there? Because when we purchased the land, it was worded one way. Now it's worded something else. Or would that become spot zoning or spot?
No,
Which land are you talking about?
the only thing that there that was.
The next
When
one.
we started or something.
Yeah.
Which land are you talking about? 'Cause we're
We
not-
have 4 acres between the athletic club and the
Oh,
school.
athletic club, sorry.
That all that land between our 2 buildings we have, which is it's 3.85 acres. And we've always held off on developing it, thinking we were waiting for the best use. And that's a pretty good spot for a dorm beside the athletic club, but we aren't allowed that.
Special Civics, when we rezoned a couple of years ago, remember we rezoned all along Valley
Yeah, we
Road?
did, the floor.
And we discussed the school. And for some reason, we didn't propose.
Because
Yeah.
actually the land that they're on is
It's
special civic.
Special Civic, right,
Yeah, that the athletic club is on.
right.
So would we have a case of continuing? No?
No, if the building isn't started or approved, a plan approved, then nothing is grandfathered. You've gotta go by the current zoning, whatever that is.
So as we look long-term, for them to purchase land from the Waterville Company is just, it's astronomical. Like, they can't afford that. Our land is affordable for them to build their facility there. But I don't know if there's special wording within that athletic club and athletic entity with the hockey academy. I mean, it's not gonna help for this coming winter, but long term, is that something we could pursue with the planning board?
Would they have an academic component to that as well?
If that's what it takes, absolutely. I'm sure Gail could structure something. Yes, I mean, they have academic,
Right, they're doing classes now.
they're doing classes now
Yeah.
through the academy, the
Right.
BBTS. So, yes, it'd be classrooms in there for sure. Blackboards, the whole bit. Or whiteboards, or
Computer stations, never mind.
Yeah.
It's where we
Too
lived
large
when we were
building.
thinking about, the Ray Center building.
Yeah.
It was too wet to build.
Well, the athletic club is built on the same, that was all the same terrain in there and. we've got
Well,
some-
I think you'll find our new wetland study is probably taken at least a portion of the 3.8 acres, but I'm sure something is buildable there.
Yeah, there's probably.
Um, the hockey academy isn't here because they're basically, like Chris said, just going along with what they have been doing in town square. And the other places which they were considering, like the North Star, were already zoned and being used as housing or, you know, as short-term housing. So there was really nothing for them to come forward. It wasn't like they were necessarily thinking about going next to the athletic center or building a whole new facility. They understand that if they build something, they're gonna have to come in for site plan review but if they were to buy the North Star or something like that, there's no need. There are meeting rooms in there and, you know, that would house their classroom space. So I don't really see, unless you want them to come in and talk to you, I don't see that it's a different use than what the North Star is being used for now.
As far
Just
North-
as an example, I don't know that.
Yeah, North Star, I would say that everything is allowed. It's
Right.
an allowed use, so there's no problem with the North Star.
Right.
Would you, are you proposing to sell them the land? Is that
however it's worked out, whether we,
lease it or something?
Build
you
their own.
know, Matt, I can't, I have to talk to, my partners on how we would structure that.
Well, we certainly recognize the Hockey Academy as a plus to the valley, that's for sure.
And we want them to continue to grow, and
Absolutely, yeah.
they're kind of unable to do that because of the housing. And for them to sit around waiting for North Star to come down at a more reasonable price, I'm just trying to figure out options for them in the future. Whether that fits into the special civic zoning.
Well, as I
for
said, a
land.
couple of years ago, we did consider rezoning that to village commercial, and I'm not sure why we didn't do it, but.
I mean, I'd just like to, get all our ducks in a row. If North Star does become available at a good price, they can put their money in there and fix it up, and everything is all set. But if that doesn't happen, I just would like to keep the ball moving in some direction, to accommodate this group that
Well,
I think is great for the valley.
I mean, or Fred about this, but I understand they're moving one of their teams to Laconia.
Yes.
And if we don't
Right.
encourage this as a community,
No, I agree.
But in talking with, I think with Steve, the coach, the team went to Laconia because of ice time, right? That's
I
what
don't know
that's
why.
what I was told.
I was told ice time and more action.
Well,
Right.
but I mean, it wasn't conveyed to me that it was a housing problem. It was what
Not.
the coach told me.
Well, I mean, that's.
Well, I thought they're bringing in the second team. They're gonna have two teams
Right.
next year again.
two Wolves teams.
Yeah.
Two Wolves.
Yeah.
So,
The
Right.
Spirit is the
Is-
team that went to.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
which is sad.
and eventually wants 4 teams.
But that's what they'd like.
Yeah, I mean, that's the.
That's their goal. That's to be their max with one rink.
Well, I think as part of the pedestrian village project, this is, the zoning of that particular area with the athletic club and the land between the school and the club, that is definitely part of the discussion.
I agree, because we had already talked about,
Yeah.
adding in the Curious George Cottage
Yeah.
in that area, so I
And the
think it
rec
was-
and how to integrate them into the
Makes
village.
perfect sense to
Yeah.
add this in and work with professionals on figuring this out. Yeah, I recall that we talked about making it, zoning it recreational and realizing, oh, that would when
Well,
we were considering it.
I think in all of our discussions with Mark Kane, that, you know, especially when you talk to him, you know, the tennis center is one of the stakeholders that we wanna have Mark do the interview, and this is definitely
Yeah.
part of your
Yeah.
discussion with him.
Yeah, so he'll be having a one-on-one.
He'll
with
be
you.
having a one-on-one
Yeah,
with
be sure
you.
to get
Yeah.
all their input.
I mean, there is something in the section of special civic, and I just showed Ray and Wendy. It says the district shall be a specifically zoned area for multiple usage, which may or may not be town-owned, to allow facility or service development beneficial to the community as a whole. So there in itself, it states something how we'd work around it.
That's really big.
It is really big, but I'm pulling.
You do not wanna have that conversation. No.
But what-
I mean,
with
unless
the
Chris
language
wants
of
to give them
town
another
owned,
floor.
Yeah.
So with the language
But-
possibly
We'll
town owned, I
button
think that not.
Yeah, we need to,
Slant
that's the
towards-
kind of language we need to
It's
address.
maybe or maybe not.
But it's,
not do, yeah.
it's the perfect time to bring this up as we're
Right.
engaging in this.
Yeah, I'm
I
really
mean, I
glad.
think in the end,
This
these
is
guys would
perfect.
like their own facilities in there, and classrooms and lounges and whatever, so they can, you know, do their thing. And I think it's gonna grow. It's very similar to the BBTS, and you know, it's good for the valley. And I'm just trying to be a little proactive here and keep the ball moving and let them know that we appreciate them being here, and we're doing all we
Yeah,
can to
absolutely.
Yeah, in fact,
do this.
we had specified the head of the hockey academy, I can't remember his name, but.
Fred Gendron
Fred.
is gonna
Yeah,
be
he was also gonna be
interviewed,
someone we're gonna
and
do
maybe
one-on-one
Steve
with.
Yeah.
if he's around.
So make sure we got.
Then they could increase the parking.
So is this
lot.
something with my partners and
Oh, I
say
would
that-
say, yeah.
Mhm.
and just kind of do some due diligence on this? We
Yeah.
do have maybe some hope for
Yeah,
a
I'd say-
building down there in the future.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think there's definitely board support for the team and doing what we
Absolutely.
need to do.
I've gone to games.
Now, you mentioned the wording was changed 15 years ago. That was before any of our time.
Right, yeah. That's
don't
why when we
know.
purchased the land,
Before your time.
you know, we had just, we could do anything there.
Well,
Well,
that wording right there is pretty open.
Well, that's
so
pretty
that
good, too.
Yeah.
So somebody,
I think that if you talk to your partners about it too, I think you need to talk to the hockey guys
oh, absolutely.
with the amount of housing they're actually gonna physically need if they keep expanding. I
Right.
mean, that's a given.
Well, I mean, they're only gonna, with one rink, they can only do so much.
So much, yep.
Well, you can put ice rinks on Special Civic if they wanted to do another one.
With housing up top.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then where's our view?
Yeah.
How big is that lot?
All right,
Terry's pretty quiet.
I don't think you could.
How big is that lot?
3.8
3.8
4
Yeah,
acres.
pretty big.
It's big.
If I remember the wetlands report, the wetlands
Yeah,
are
we're gonna
only
have to
along
look
the
into
edge.
that, yeah.
I think
And
it
the
was only
state,
along the
they've
edge.
given us, already we have driveway permits to go
Yeah.
in there and, so,
Well, it's not a state road.
oh, now it's not a state road, but
You gotta get them from Jimmy.
hopefully we'll be able to get one from the town.
I think we could go.
And then we would use, you know, some of the land, we'd have additional, we'd have parking, so, which we need over
There
there.
goes the water park.
Well,
There's still the golf course.
Oh, that's true.
Oh.
okay, thank you, so, appreciate it.
Okay.
We'll be back in. Yeah, thanks.
That's it.
Chris, did you have anything?
No, I just, in case anything came up concerning the transportation study, I didn't know.
Oh, okay,
If there was any-
that's
anything
next
I could-
on our
next on the
Next
agenda.
on the
Mark's
agenda.
supposed to be here at 8:30.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's about then.
I also
Do we
want
need
to bring
to?
up,
Do election of officers?
while Chris is here.
Yeah, have you had a meeting since town meeting?
No.
Okay, so everyone who was on the board has been reappointed, so whoever had a 2014 term now has a 2017 term.
Okay.
Haha.
Do we know who's up or who, the individuals? No?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have the town
I don't know how
report
to
with
do
me,
that.
but hey, the board didn't
Ray
change.
does.
That's the
Oh, no.
bottom
I
line.
do.
He does.
Well, Ray is here. Ray is the chair.
I know, but we want to know whose term was up.
My turn,
His term.
Bob's turn, Gilbert,
Yeah.
Wendy's turn. I think that's it.
That's it, I think.
Okay. Good to 2017.
We passed for now.
So congratulations.
Yeah, geez.
Thank you for your service.
So that goes to 17, okay, so Harry must be 16.
We don't get
The way this works, if you don't want to be on the board, you gotta let us know.
Yeah.
Silence is
bar.
silence is volunteering. Okay.
We don't get a watch or something? No?
Well, no, you're not off the board yet. You get to watch when you get
Oh,
off the board.
okay.
It'll be a Timex, I promise.
I think
Yeah.
Harry's 16, right? Harry must be 20.
Must be 16.
She's getting the book. We'll check to make sure, but.
So, as far as I know, it's us three. Did you have something you want to
Yeah, I've got something I'd like to bring up since Chris is here.
A really long time.
And it's the overflow parking for the tubing.
Yes.
That didn't get plowed, and we had significant parking on issues on weekends.
Oh, sure.
For Lost Pass Road, and I got excited. I drove by one day and went to a selectman meeting, and I said, "Oh, it's great." I said, "You know, my issue. I guess somebody must have heard, and they're taking care of it. They're big machines plowing the overflow parking." And then somebody at one of the selectmen said, "Oh, that's for the Special Olympics." And I said, "Wow." So anyway, two things. Number one, can that be taken care of for next year? And how does the staff inside deal with that? What, they're renting tubes or whatever. I plead ignorance to that part of it. I haven't been in the wintertime, inside the golf club. But do they tell people like you can't park on the street, overflow parking is whatever, and they're trained to do that?
The quick answer is through most of the season, no. And I don't think it was really brought to our attention as a real problem. I mean, we saw people doing it because it was just packed.
But when you came to us for the snowboarding, for the tubing, that was thoroughly discussed as far as overflow parking.
Yeah, absolutely. You mean to plow the maintenance shed?
Yes.
Yes. So we had some problem. We did it a couple times, and then we had problems because of the sleigh rides. That's sleighs. And the few times we had plowed it, nobody was going there. We had signage and nobody was parking there. The customers would say, "Well, I'm going to park on the road, and what are they going to, and it was kind of a, what are they going to do, tow me type attitude.
Well,
which
probably
was-
will happen. That's going to happen next year.
No, I know, I understand that, and so we would verbally, so as we realized that this was getting people, as we went through the season, and that overflow parking was just sitting empty, and then eventually the sleigh rides needed it, no one was parking there anyway, and people just started parking on the road. We put up some signs that would get plowed right over. They were kind of just temporary ones. Long term, obviously, something needs to be done. There's no doubt about that. I think our initial thought was, number one, it'd be great to get some permanent signs. Now, technically, I'm not trying to put your store on the town, but it is a town road. And then we'll have our better more permanent directional signing. One thing I have not, I gotta be careful, I have not discussed this with Bill Cantlin and WCI, but we would like to actually see if there's some way to even extend what they already have in terms of the overflow and lighting. See, there was no, we didn't have the lighting down at the maintenance shed that probably would have made it a little more customer friendly to park down there. I think that was one of the hesitations people had. It's too dark and quote unquote far away.
But as the people come up and, I'm assuming the people that park on the road go to rent tubes, or they just,
Yeah.
maybe parents going to watch the kids or
No,
something?
they're renting. Any parent
So
that's there is.
when somebody sells a ticket or however, for one thing, part of the training being, if there's no parking here, there is no parking on the road.
Mhm.
If you can't park here, you have to park over there,
Right.
or you're probably going to get towed.
And I think,
I mean,
so a
I
couple of
would.
things. The guys inside I don't think could see when it was getting busy and you know when it was parking. And people
Somebody's job,
even
not-
when we I understand. And even when we had plowed that maintenance shed, because of the lighting, the few folks that would park somewhere else, they would actually choose to park over at the ice rink and walk over. The other thing that we found this year is virtually nobody took the bus. We ran that bus Friday and Saturday till 8 o'clock, and it was absolutely dead empty, which was surprising and disappointing. So I think that was one of our hopes that would alleviate some of the. I think the only thing to do, to your point, is really address it in terms of the maintenance shed with better lighting, maybe a couple signs on the road. And again, I'm happy to pay for them
We had talked, the board had talked too about some kind of temporary signage that could go in the wintertime or whatever and come down. I don't know how that.
Yeah, I mean, as
So
long as it doesn't
options.
get plowed over, that was
Oh, yeah.
the only thing. We had some stuff on wooden stakes, some laminated signs on wooden stakes, and I think they just looked like temporary signs.
Okay,
They-
I just
they
wanted to
didn't-
bring it up to you.
No, it's a
realize
real
that
problem.
it's gonna be an issue
that
coming
we
into
see
next
going
year.
forward, without a doubt.
But do you really think lighting is the issue? Because if they're parking on Lost Pass Road, there's no lighting on that road either, so it's
Right.
dark.
Yeah, no,
So,
that's,
you know, I
that's
think
a
maybe
good point.
distance,
I
yeah.
mean, it
It's
turns
closer, yeah.
in
No,
driving
it's
us
closer.
up Lost Pass Road on one of those weekends, it turns Lost Pass Road into a one-lane street.
Mhm.
Which
I mean,
is-
you got
Yeah.
snowbanks, you got trucks, pickup trucks, and cars, SUVs.
Discuss this with Bill and WCI, is something, even if we had to put down a temporary geotextile or something, so WCI would feel comfortable having us park on the fairway, actually on this side of the road, more on the tubing side of things,
Mhm.
and actually
Not
plowing
next to
out
my
a.
house.
What's that?
Not next
No,
to my
no,
house.
No,
No,
down
further
the
away.
Oh, okay.
across the
Oh,
street
okay,
from
yeah, yeah,
Irvin's
yeah.
area.
Path Road.
Because that is actually still lit with the
Yeah.
lights, and we could actually even put up more lights if we not to be too bright, but or a path. You know, we did that downlighted path. We could do something like that if we could do that on the golf
Mhm.
course side. So without a doubt, we've been discussing it kind of constantly.
Okay.
There's a couple other things going on with WCI, and I think that'll determine whether we can really attack going after parking on the golf course. But yeah, we see it as a real issue. I mean, I dread the day we tow a car. That would be just disastrous. But I understand that also it's a safety issue, right? I mean, I assume that's.
Well, emergency vehicles couldn't get up that
Absolutely, yeah.
road if they had to,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a major issue,
Right.
Lost Pass.
Sure.
The other thing is too, Chris, I didn't realize, I don't know how many of us on the board did realize that buses were running at night. I mean, it was something that we had proposed and that we were looking forward to, but this is my first knowledge of those buses.
They ran
I
all the way
think that was part
right
of the
up
approval.
through.
I've seen them.
Whether we were going to do it every day during February break, and
Yeah.
we looked at the usage, and it was literally like 3.
Okay,
We would run them to all 5 major hotels.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't go to every stop, but the 5 major hotels, because obviously that was the bulk of them.
no,
Nobody
Okay.
wanted to use them. I think there's still to be honest, I think the lack of lighting in the town, while it makes it beautiful at night, it still makes people a little hesitant to just get on a dark bus, and there's some hesitancy there. I think that's why, again, we've always discussed why there is a decrease in pedestrian traffic nowadays and all that stuff.
Mhm.
While we are in close proximity, if you can't see around the corner on a dark night, there's a little hesitancy there. So I think because we were going to the 5 major stops,
mhm,
the shops themselves were well lit. I can't picture the lighting in each of them, but so I didn't think that was going to be a problem, but no one used them.
Okay.
You know, we had signage in all the hotels, and
Yeah.
we posted it online and everything, and no one. So
Okay.
we did get very good visitation at night, though. 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock on Friday and Saturdays were really strong for us.
good.
So that was good.
Good. very successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. In terms of our revenues were right where we thought they would be. A little more costly than we thought, but the first year, that happens. I mean, we're just a lot of unanticipated costs. We had to bring the snowmaking out for another.
Yeah.
We brought snowmaking out in the first place. We didn't anticipate that. You can't do tubing on natural snow. I learned that one quick. Tubing discussion, but at some point in probably August or September, we'll probably come back to you with a plan that talks a little more in detail about how we'll deal with the parking, maybe some lighting changes. One of our concepts is to put permanent electricity out there, so you don't have a generator. It wasn't too bad, was it?
Didn't hear a thing.
No,
Okay.
it was.
Didn't
Okay.
hear a thing.
And the lighted path, we just want to get some feedback whether people thought that was too intrusive or not. I mean, we tried to do it with the down lighting. So by making some of the stuff more permanent out there, I think we can make it much more efficient and actually open it a lot earlier, and keep it. As the season wore out though, come March, even though it was just like the ski resort, no matter how much snow you have, people just stopped coming.
Right.
So the season was a little shorter than anticipated, but
Well,
revenue rise, we were right there. People seemed to enjoy it. We got very few
Yeah, it was
complaints.
very successful.
I think we only had one injury, and that was just a woman slipping on the ice. It wasn't even really a tubing accident. Poor woman slipped and hurt her foot. But other than that, it actually went very, very well for us. So.
Well,
In your discussions when you're planning, can you, something to think about is having the walk to the hill a little more defined?
Yes. You mean as opposed to just the lighted path?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we also found that a lot of people they'd run to the pond.
Mhm.
You know, they wouldn't even take the
And
lighted
they'd run
path
to
and
my
s-
house.
Oh, would they really?
I
Oh.
called and your people were wonderful. They
Oh.
put some rope up just to keep them.
Okay. I didn't even know about that. I'm sorry.
They were probably looking for an adult beverage.
Do I do here? Yeah, right.
Maybe you might have a bar.
No, we'll definitely.
Gin and tonic?
You know what I mean? The kids would love running around and sliding on the ice, and a few people brought skates, but it was pretty rare.
yeah.
So I think a couple things. I don't think we lit that very well, and I don't want it lit up like a
Right.
Christmas tree or anything. So I'm not sure how we would do it. If maybe just leave it as is.
Yeah, I was
We
just
also
curious.
people love the bonfire, but they actually want it, and rightly so, because all the parents go watch the kids at the bottom of the hill. So one idea would be to move the bonfire out to the bottom of the hill, and maybe have some better benches, some more food and beverage actually out there. We're toying with the idea, again, to bring to you an idea of a lift, if those of you who ski up at the mountain, our old pony tow, the old thing used to hold like this. It's the most simple lift on the planet you can get. It's basically just a wheel and a cable. We were contemplating with that, pushing that, seeing what it would cost to put that up against without a lift. And it limits obviously what we can charge and the experience. I mean, people had a great time. The beauty was for $10 an hour, after 55 minutes, everyone was exhausted.
Yeah.
They had a great time, and the parents loved it. The parents actually loved having their kids run up the hill. I was shocked by that.
Not many people signed up for 2 hours. Huh?
No, not many. But they did love it. But it's 1 hour walking seems to be the perfect time. But we had some people that were saying, hey, it'd be great if we'd stay out longer if we had a lift, and it would be a little more of a full-time experience. Anyway, we'll bring all that to you. Kind of revised plans. But if you have any comments, please let us know, and we'll incorporate all that into the plans. Come on.
When we approved the skateboard park, we invited you back in May to have this kind of a discussion. I would propose that we skip May and do it, you come back in October with your plans. By October, you should have,
Oh, sure,
have
absolutely.
it firmed up, and I don't think any necessary to come back in May after this discussion.
Not in May, but I'm just wondering if October might be a little bit late, because
Yeah, I think we probably want to come in August. Because
Yeah.
if you guys don't want
if we have to
certain
work
things,
with them
yeah.
on something, they're gonna
Yeah.
need some
Okay.
time.
Because
What is this gonna be? Are you doing, is it something you want publicly noticed, as if it were a site plan review? Is this,
Well, my
What do you-
recollection is we gave them approval, so
Right.
to do certain things. I guess
Right.
if they're gonna do something above and beyond, maybe it would be a,
Well, I just wanna know for, you know,
Yeah,
as
right.
far as when Chris needs to get the plans to us, so that we can, if you want a full-blown review by the regulation, then he would need to get something to us before the end of July, if he's coming in August.
well, maybe the only thing that would, I'm just talking out loud now, but,
Mhm.
maybe the lift is the only thing that,
Or any significant changes like that, right?
Hmm?
I mean, we
We
approved for how it was
we
last
approved.
year, but any changes, right? We
Well,
would need to have.
Lighting
Well,
changes
well,
or
Yeah.
Parking.
Did we,
parking,
We've had a lot
lighting,
of changes.
yeah.
did we,
so I guess,
I don't remember, I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but I don't remember snowmaking being
Yeah,
part of the original
neither.
thing. It was gonna be like all natural.
Yeah.
It would, yeah, that's
So,
correct. It was
so
all-
I'm
Yeah.
just thinking, if we're talking about a lift and maybe some snowmaking or whatever, then,
Parking,
yeah,
lighting,
you
I
know?
think we should.
If I could, I think we should treat this almost as a whole new application.
That's what I mean.
Okay.
Let's do
Yeah.
it like, it's
Yeah.
almost like we're starting from scratch, that way you guys are
Okay.
getting a full, clear
Yeah.
Okay.
picture.
I think-
All right.
And I think it would
Okay,
put
Yeah,
more
keep it
flexibility onto
public
the
and
table for
open.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
so if we're coming in August,
can be noticed and.
so it can be noticed
Yeah.
and, you know,
With the
what, that's
neighbors.
fine. I just
Sure.
wanted to make sure that he didn't bring something in August and have
Right.
all of us go, geez, this is like all new
Well,
and
no.
Yeah.
we
Okay.
gotta
I think
now
we just treat
come
it as a
back
whole new
in
thing.
We'll
Yeah.
handle it as a whole
September,
new thing.
yeah.
That's
Okay,
Okay,
good.
that sounds good.
Site plan
And we'll-
review in August.
And we'll include the skateboard park, is that what you'll?
That's October, that's why,
Okay,
that's why.
Oh,
so we'll leave it there?
Well, yeah, they're not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
skateboard
It's
park, we
separate.
approved.
Yeah,
it.
No, it is separate, it's
Separate,
just saying,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you for the update. I guess we can go on to the SE Group Pedestrian Village.
Do we need to elect officers?
yeah, you,
I was just kind of,
you were trying.
well, I didn't want to hold up everybody.
Well, no, Ray, Bob, and Wendy are the three that were reappointed for terms going to 2017. Cindy and Cheryl are the two for March of 2015 coming up. And we still do have a vacancy on alternates, right?
Yep, one.
One, and that is also,
2015.
a 2017, so nobody's been appointed to that. It became a 17.
Wow.
There was 115, 116, and 2 14s.
I thought we kind of had it spread out, but okay.
Well, we have it as spread out as it can be.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's where everybody is. So you should probably re-elect your officers or,
Okay, we'll do the offices. Any nominations?
Yeah, I nominate Ray Kachowski for chair.
I'll second that.
Any other nominations?
I'll nominate Terry Wade as assistant chair.
No, I meant for.
no,
Oh,
for
for
chair.
Oh, for chair. Oh,
No,
no.
it already got said.
Shall we vote?
Yeah.
By acclaim.
All in favor, aye.
For vice chair.
Terry Wade, I'll nominate.
I'll second.
Any other nominations?
He's watching Game of Thrones again.
No other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
And we need secretary.
Is it Kathy?
Kathy,
secretary.
no, she needs to
So
stay.
unfair, she's not
No,
here.
that's okay.
You know what happens when people aren't here? You vote them in.
Do I
I
have-
nominate Kathy as
No, I sound, you know.
Any other nominations for secretary? If not,
No, it's,
You interested?
I've done it. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, she'll do it?
I was.
Yeah, that's.
You would like to do it?
Sure.
Okay, nominate,
That's even better.
nominate Cindy Peoples.
I've done it before.
Okay, let's see, how do we, should we make this a secret ballot?
Oh, no, I
Wait,
withdraw
wait.
my nomination.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, I withdraw my nomination,
Or,
for secretary based on the fact that the person's not here.
Okay, who seconded that?
I don't think
I don't
anybody.
think
anybody
did.
there wasn't.
So I
It
think
was
it's
never
safe.
seconded.
No.
Yeah. Okay, so, let's see, we have Cindy nominated, all in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations.
thanks.
Okay, now we can
Back
go on to
again.
business. SE Group, Pedestrian Village Development. you wanna take
Yeah,
this?
we had, we've started, we're very excited to begin the whole process, and, Mark and Terry, and Terry joined in since Ray was still on vacation.
Mentally going.
And we initiated the process, basically discussing interviews with the primary stakeholders in town, which would entail member of SE Group, member of the planning board, having a lead discussion, focusing on the transportation issues. We discussed a list of names for that. We also had gone over the public listening sessions where we're trying to engage members of the general public, residents. The biggest day that really appealed to us to hold a listening session was during the fishing derby over Memorial Day weekend, since there's a nice grouping of people in town square just there naturally. Then we'd also discussed starting surveys. Hopefully by early May, we'd have some surveys online, trying to, again, focus people on doing it electronically just to save the paperwork and extra effort needed with paper surveys. And I believe in the water bills, it went out a little notice for people to watch on
Right.
the website.
Yep.
Right.
For the upcoming surveys, and contact condo association presidents to really try to get the word out for second home, or just get everybody to participate. That's our big push here, just to make sure that everyone's aware of what's going on and can participate. Definitely, yes.
I actually have a copy of what I sent you,
Oh, great.
if everybody would like one.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And just pull off what Wendy was talking about, I am Arcane SE Group. This document I'm handing out is basically a sort of a summary of what we're anticipating for the public engagement process on this project. And I know I haven't had a chance to talk with all of you at this point, but as you might know from the way we approached the RFP that was let, one of the key differentiators, I think, of our approach was to make sure we had a pretty broad public engagement process. We felt it was really important that the public have some ample opportunities to participate in the discussion around how to improve the pedestrian orientation of the community and also anticipate how future development might shape that. So this engagement process really involves two major components. One of them is a stakeholder component that is focused, as Wendy indicated, on identifying some key individuals and key groups within the community that are obviously very integral to understanding how the transportation network works and the issues that are surrounding it. And then a more broad public engagement process to try to reach out to as many people as we can from various perspectives on how they use the system, what their concerns are, what their hopes are, etc. Sort of overarching all of this is a goal to make sure that the town master plan that's already been adopted, the vision that's already been established in the town master plan, is carried through as part of the discussion around the future. Because obviously that's the benchmark on which kind of you can kind of measure how you're, you know, where you want to get to. So one of the things one of the things we're going to try to do, and I think it'll be very helpful, is to bring back into the survey some of the language that's already in the approved town master plan, to make sure, to see what people actually understand about it, to kind of gauge the level of penetration of the vision, and to hopefully build off of that as part of the public engagement process going forward. Because I think it's very important that you already have a very strong vision in your master plan that talks about pedestrian, you know, orientation and the need to make sure that transportation is efficient and the town is doing things to expand pedestrian experience and all of those things. That's pretty well articulated in your current approved master plan. One of the key questions that we had was, how well does the public actually know that? And how deeply do they understand that? And what does it mean to them when they read those paragraphs in the master plan? So I think the first survey will hopefully try to get to some of that, to try to understand the depth of understanding and the interpretation of some of that language. Because once we know that, then we can kind of move along from there. The other thing is as you'll see in the last page of that, there's a sort of timeline, the rolled out timeline. The goal is to have this basically done by the end of the year, with the hope that the work will include a couple of things at the end of the day. It will include probably some specific physical changes that, based upon our analysis from a transportation perspective and a planning perspective, that we think are useful to help you improve the conditions. And those might be issues related to intersections, those might be issues related to pedestrian crossings, those may be issues related to sort of the use of the bus system and how maybe to expand its potentiality. The other part of the resulting work of the study will be some policy recommendations that the planning board might consider for changes in land use policy, for example, zoning policy. And those would be things would be developed to support the underlying pedestrian orientation that the project is looking at. So as we go through this process, as we review what's in your current code and we look at areas for improvement, we'll provide recommendations that you can consider. Obviously, you guys will have the ultimate authority the town will have the ultimate authority to decide what it really wants to do, but our recommendations will be based upon both the public engagement process, what we've heard from the public, as well as our professional expertise in understanding, you know, how you take some of that feedback and morph it into some policy changes. So at the end of the day, that's what the document will prepare will actually include some very specific physical improvements and then some more policy recommendations. As to the physical improvements, our partner in this project is VHB, and they actually engineering transportation related company. They actually had done some traffic monitoring during the ski season in anticipation of this project. We kind of got a little ahead of it because we wanted to make sure we had some traffic data during ski season, because obviously that's very critical. So that we do have already, but they were out yesterday and they're out today, examining intersections, taking some rough measurements just to confirm the data we have and that we are collecting in terms of road geometry, the shape of roads, and the sight lines, and all of the sort of things that are associated with some of the key intersections in the community, in anticipation of building this database of the physicality of all this, so that as we go forward in the process, we can come up with some recommendations. There are, as the timeline indicates, there are 5 major phases of work, and we're in phase 1, which is data gathering and project initiation. So this is kind of the, trying to get our hands around all the data that's available phase. The next phase is the analysis phase, and that's going to take a look at what the data we're collecting says. It will include, as Wendy indicated, survey work that's going to happen this next month. We're proposing to do 2 surveys. An initial survey, which would mostly, again, be to introduce the project, introduce some of the issues, try to get people to weigh in on their understanding of the vision. And then later on in the process, we'll do a second survey, which we'll likely use to gauge people's understanding or appreciation of potential opportunities. So as we identify areas potentially for improvement, or areas for perhaps looking at some different alternatives for how the current situation works, we can present them through the survey and get some feedback. And it provides a good opportunity to sort of use that public engagement process to gauge if people are actually comfortable with the range of things we might consider. It winnows it down, so we'll obviously in that phase we'll probably introduce a wider variety of opportunities and alternatives, if nothing more than to get the public to react to them, so we can kind of see where people's thoughts are. The third phase is, and this sort of dovetails with that survey, is the issues and opportunities phase, and that is really looking at the specifics of what the analysis says as issues and trying to understand where those issues are in terms of safety, operations and maintenance, traffic conditions at certain times of the year and seasonality, road conditions and how we might address that issue, for example, in terms of road quality, pedestrian connections, where there's gaps and things like that. It would identify where the transit system functions now, where the gaps are in that, and then what the opportunities to address some of those issues are. Again, those would be fairly wide aperture, so we can kind of explore it. And then the last two phases, phases 4 and 5, really are to sort of wrap it up, but that takes obviously some process, because we don't just want to, wrap it up. We want to spend some time with you and with the public to take what we heard from that issues and opportunities discussion and come back with a draft plan that would provide all this information in a way that is useful. On the physical improvements, if we're proposing any particular physical improvements, those will include some rough ideas of costs associated with them to give you guys a gauge as to the capital part of this, because we know it's obviously a critical piece. On the policy side, we will indicate some potential changes like to zoning, for example. It won't be necessarily written in zoning language, but it will be written in a way that helps you understand kind of where you're starting from now on your code and where the work we're doing suggests perhaps modification. And obviously you guys will have to work through the process of actually adopting any final zoning. And then the last phase is to hear the final feedback and make the final changes and get this thing wrapped up in a format that is suitable. Sort of connecting all of this, as was indicated, we are going to take advantage of the town's current and hopefully future website that's in process, we hear, to continue to have that as a vehicle for communicating where we are in the project. I think it's really important. I have always found from a community planning perspective, it's very important to lay out the roadmap for people so they know as far in advance as you can where things are coming, and give them chances to gear up and get ready to meet you at a public meeting, for example. I mean, we don't shy away from that at all. And give them a chance to sort of know it's coming. So we'll use the website as one of the means to do that. Obviously things like the water bill on a quarterly basis might be a good additional vehicle to send out a little blurb to get people to know things are going on. Obviously you have that mailing list. Then the survey we're gonna use will also collect information on the person who's submitting it. One of the things I think Nancy had a great suggestion was to do a sort of a raffle for the survey. So give away a Kindle Fire for, if you do the survey, your name goes automatically in the pot to win a Kindle Fire or some sort of device like that. And that's a great example of something you can do that's relatively low cost, certainly within the budget of the project, and has a chance to get somebody excited about it. We talked with the steering committee about one of the things about the survey is that this is a situation where surveying in this context is really about to try to get some idea of where the public is at. And I think it's important in a project like this it's not simply a matter of understanding what owners, residents are thinking, but that is important. We do want to know them as individuals, as a group too, sort of what the thinking is, because obviously capital expenditures and stuff relate to that. But the user base is bigger than that. I mean, you have guests that come up here, you have kids that use the system that are not necessarily voters. So it's important, I think, in terms of the survey work and in the broader public outreach, to listen to all those voices, because ultimately the transportation system functions for a whole lot of people. And if we hear things, for example, from discussions with kids about schools and about the use of the transit system for the academy, and that can help make the system work better for a larger number of people, well, that would be good information to know. And as opposed to, well, they don't own property, for example, and why you don't need to consider their input. So, and the same with resort guests, and obviously working with the mountain to understand resort guests' needs and how they interact with the community is also very important, as you well know. So we're really excited about making sure that on that public part of this outreach, it's as wide aperture as possible. It's you never get 100%. You do your best. And I think one of the things that's going to work to our advantage here is that we do actually have a fairly lengthy timeline. We didn't want to come in here and say we could get this thing done for you in 2 months, because that would really foreshorten those opportunities for people to participate. So we are going to be having this conversation within the community in multiple seasons, which is really good. So we get a little bit of the tail end of the ski season. We certainly get the spring and fall, summer and fall, which is really good. And we'll get a little bit of the early winter too, that will hopefully make its way into the discussion as we wrap things up at the end of this. So I think that's a very helpful, that was a conscious decision on our part to make sure we didn't sort of foreshorten the input from key stakeholders.
And I think, Chris, if you guys must do surveys all the time and ask guests, what they like. So
We do
maybe
now.
sharing, that's what I mean, no, but sharing that data as part of this is probably a good idea, so that we can capture more of that winter input.
Yep. And that's one thing, our experience working with lots of resorts across the country, we certainly know that the resorts are good at understanding who their customers are and the concerns their customers express, and they are very attuned to that, obviously being a business that's in the hospitality industry. So we obviously will take advantage of that as to the degree we can get that information and bring that as part of the conversation. Ultimately, at the end of the day, this is a study that's going to look at the improvements the community can make that will materially help the current situation, but also hopefully be a vanguard for addressing how things as they evolve are handled. So they give you guys some guidance as a group on making those key decisions as to, let's use lighting as an example. If one of the dimensions of pedestrian safety is lighting, which it is, there may be some recommendations as we look at the core of the community and understanding the lighting levels that are appropriate to maintain safety. There may be some conversation around what that should be, because clearly if you're going to adopt a strategy of being more pedestrian oriented, it has to function in times of the day when there's not ample natural light. So we'll have to bring we can bring forward some recommendations and some conversations about how that's handled in other communities, for example, of a similar ilk. There are some standards, there are some guidances that are available from national organizations that weigh in on that conversation. As I think Mark probably can attest to, that there's things of liability communities bear related to safety and lighting. Again, we can bring that conversation from our experiences into the recommendations that we put forward. But the goal being to give you guys a little bit of something to turn back to as this is finished, and as you guys move forward with your continual process of planning for the growth of the evolution of the community, to come back to and say, okay, is this a strategy that actually is working well for us? And are we, if we're going to adopt some changes in zoning, is this something that we think is consistent with both our vision and as well as some good practices that will serve us as we go forward?
I think that's a good idea, bringing in a lot of stakeholder and public opinion and so forth. And it seems like your intent is very heavy into that area.
Mm-hmm.
But I was expecting at the end, and I think you kind of got onto this a little bit, but I just want to make sure that what we're going to end up with in the end is some sort of a plan that includes, or that ends up with your ideas with regard to the best way to handle what information you got from your surveys and so forth. But also, it was my intent in the beginning when we started this whole thing was to get someone with some expertise that would guide us and end up with a plan that shows sidewalks and lighting and how it should all work and so forth. Not just to satisfy the public wants, but to provide a plan that has some intelligence behind it. It's not something we're just throwing together and saying, you know, I think we should have a sidewalk here, but the sidewalk should be here and should be this width
Yep.
for a particular purpose, and this is how the flow will be, and this is how you're gonna handle all this stuff. Because that's what we were missing, when every time something would come up for approval, we really didn't have that central idea to work from. And I wanna make sure that in the end, we don't just have a report that says this is what the people would like. I want something that we can use for years to come in connection with the master plan.
Yeah.
That will give us something to work with.
Yeah, and Terry, I think that's a good point. I mean, you're absolutely correct. That is the goal of our work, is to provide you guys with something that is tangible, that you can actually utilize. And I can guarantee you, at the end of the day, there will be recommendations that we put in there that probably do not resonate very strongly with some of the public. Because some of these are challenging things sometimes. I mean, for example, lighting is a small example, but it's a good one. Is no one normally wants more lighting. It's just, you know, that's not, I've lived in New England for a very long time, and I know that from my own personal experience being on a planning board in my town. But I also know that as a community and as individual individual businesses come together and look at themselves as part of this environment where people come to visit, you know, lighting is a key component of it. And that's one of those balancing points between sort of owners, residents, and the fact that you guys are in a tourism, guest-oriented climate. You have to find that balance point that you're comfortable with of maintaining public safety, maintaining visual, you know, a certain level of lighting that's safe and also supportive of the economic underpinnings of the community. So I can tell you, I don't know, you know, see, I can't put it out there right now exactly what the recommendations would be, but knowing this place as I do at this point, there are some areas of town that are not really well lit, as an example. And as you look at the town's growth over some period of time, and you start looking at potential improvements in the core, there may be some areas where today's levels aren't adequate to meet safety obligations or to support movement, circulation, et cetera. So we can't shy away from providing those recommendations to you, because that's part of our mandate, I think, is to give you guys the best knowledge, our best knowledge and our best thinking related to how you guys should pursue this. Ultimately, how you guys decide to adopt that will be clearly your own, but I think the plan will provide you with solid recommendations and justifications as to why some of these improvements are we believe are recommended and warranted. And finding that balance point will be up to, you know, this body as well as the broader town.
We'll be able to see some sort of progress reports or something as this progresses.
Yeah. One of the things that's sort of built into this is obviously the phase 1 and phase 2, so the data gathering piece. The things that are shared there are relatively innocuous because it's not, we're gathering information, so there's not a lot to, we're listening more than we're actually doing anything. On the analysis piece, there will be some preliminary data that's pulled together that helps us understand, the physical issues like this road geometries, for example, and they're looking at, for example, VHB is going to be looking at kind of current sight lines, for example, and addressing areas that from their perspective that are problematic, and they'll have a plan that will help us communicate that. So we obviously will share that with you. Survey results that will come in, the summary of the stakeholder engagement process that we're going to be going into will be provided as well, all interim product in each phase. And then in the issues and opportunities phase, where we're actually going to sort of synthesize some of that into some areas, some physical suggestions for opportunities for improvement, that includes a public presentation. There would actually be a public presentation at that, and I would suggest that probably one of the best ways to facilitate that would be to share that presentation with you guys ahead of time, so you know what's coming, because it's really nice to make sure that the board that's actually in charge of this thing has a sense of where we're going to go, so we don't get a public meeting and say something you guys aren't at least understand what we're going to say. And then have a broader public meeting around that, and that would be something that we would do in the August timeline. And then as we get to the draft plan obviously would again go to the board ahead of time, then be put out for public comment and conversation, public meeting as well during that draft report, so we can get, we'll announce it, use the media as we can, use signage and businesses to let people know what's happening, and try to get broad input. So I think as we're committed to this, we're definitely going to be feeding kind of interim work product, interim thinking to you guys on a sort of continual basis throughout. Not overwhelming you. We don't want to we want to make it very strategic so that it's very helpful and productive, not just sort of a trickle of meaningless information, but provide you with continual information. Obviously working with our steering committee primarily as the vehicle for that as a conduit, I think is probably the best approach.
And we'll be at every meeting and be able to give updates, certainly to the planning board directly every meeting, as we will be working closely.
And that's one of the things that, as we sort of talked about how we wanted to execute this project, is we feel very strongly that, example, for these stakeholder engagements and at public meetings, and sort of as this project is communicated to the broader public, it's really important to have the planning board be kind of visible in that. I mean, we don't want to, we're not carpetbaggers that are coming in out of town. They're just here to tell you how to fix your town and then leaving. I mean, I think the point of this is that at the end of the day, you own the work, and that it's part of your planning, the things that you consider as part of your planning process. And for that to be really, truly effective, you need to have as much, ownership and investment in the outcome as you can. Again, I will guarantee you, this is not new to us, that there will be some things that will come up that you might go, well, I certainly wouldn't have proposed that, and that's fine. I mean, that's our job is not to regurgitate public sentiment and have it just be the report. It's to use engineering, use planning technique to really get to some things that we think are useful and valuable, and let you guys have a solid understanding of what those are, and then consider them fully as you move forward with your process.
What Terry said made me think. So I'm wondering, the planning board isn't listed as a stakeholder, but I just started to think, the planning board maybe should be because of our master plan, because I was thinking about what you were saying about lighting, and there are certain things in the master plan that really bound what you would suggest, because if you're suggesting giant floodlights, it's just not even thinkable. Because of our dark
You can
skies
tell you now I'm not
possibility.
thinking that, but I'm shouting floodlights anyway.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. And
Yes.
so I just didn't see in our process where we're gonna have a meeting with the experts to talk about our master plan and just make sure everything's clear.
Well, we had
And
talked
what
about
we-
that briefly, that I had asked about the selectmen, where we had come back to was that that's all in our documentation that they're reviewing. But I don't know,
but
that's-
I guess it'd be great to make sure we just talked about it and made sure that you guys understood what we were most passionate about, because I just wanted to make sure that was out there. And-
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I think that, to Wendy's observation, I think that, regulations and the plan exist as approved documents that say something. And so, we obviously, we're looking at them, we've looked at them, and we will continue to review them. So our initial thought was, those are the will of the people as expressed in writing.
But this isn't regulations, this is the master plan, kind of our vision for the future.
No, I know that's not ordinance, but it is part of the it is part of the governance of the town in terms of it's the vision on which the regulations are supposedly to support. So I understand the question I think you're getting to, or the issue you're getting to, is whether or not the document itself tells the whole backstory enough for us to fully understand and appreciate what went into the thinking around that master plan.
Even if we just go through kind of the items lighting, signage, blah, 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 that Mark had listed on the kind of initial RFP that
Mhm.
are the items that we care about, making sure that are in the final product, and representatives of the planning board just say, here's what in the master plan we were really passionate about when we put it together. Even if it takes 15 minutes, I just wanna make sure that that gets expressed somewhere, and I just wanna I didn't see it in the process.
Yeah, well, I think one of the ways we could do that was, and obviously in the data gathering piece is to get all the information together, is one of the ways we could do that is to let us digest what we read and see if we actually understand
After
it.
you read it.
Yeah, and then hopefully echo that back through to you to see if we have the flavor right. You know, do we catch the things that are really important to you? I mean, obviously, you know, as I mentioned, you know, the vision document is the thing that we are going to start with as a tool to understand what people's ideas about the future are. You know, it's also been my experience that even though that's a document that you guys probably labored over for a long time, it probably doesn't have as much resonance outside this building as you'd want. That's typically how that works. And what it means to individuals outside this building is different depending on the individual. So that's one reason why in the survey I thought it would be good to try to ask some questions around those parts of the vision that are kind of applicable here, to see if we can understand a little more deeply what people's reactions to things are. Are they really supportive of the way it was crafted, or are there questions related to that, or are there uncertainties, or are there issues, you know what I mean? So we're trying to sort of suss it out, because I think it's not like we want to go back and say you need to change your vision. That's not the point. It's every vision is interpreted. That's what you do with it. It's a document you read and you sort of interpret it, because the language in it typically is flexible enough to allow you for some leeway. Typical
And
high altitude language.
Sharon, we will have that master plan like PDF on the website, or?
Yeah, I'll send it to Tom and I'll PDF it to everybody as well.
That way, when
Link on
the
site.
residents they can always go on the website and, you know,
Yeah.
browse through it, or
Well, and I think as we talked, you know, as this project kind of came to fruition here, and we talked about at the town meeting about how to sort of present, you know, the idea of this project. I think one of the things that we felt when working with the steering committee was that, you know, using the master plan. I mean, I think there was some people I had conversation with that didn't really know about it as a document, and that's not surprising. I mean, it's completely consistent with my experiences working with communities. Is that for the vast majority of people, so it happens here, and you know, whatever. But it's not a problem until they're at a zoning hearing or some, you know, site plan review, and they realize, well, that's not what I expected it to be. Well, it's been in the document for 2 years or 5 years or whatever. So we certainly recognize that it's a good thing. I think it's a very good thing for the community to keep that message going out there. Use that as a message that filters this project through, because it's wholly consistent. I mean, what this study is really trying to do is narrow down the thinking around a lot of what the vision says, the master plan says, because the master plan has lots of language talking about pedestrian, you know, orientation and making sure that people are, you know, you're taking advantage of mobility and your transit and all those things. It has all that language is in there. This study is kind of building upon that, sort of evolving that to the next level of thinking. And I think it's a great thing to do, is to keep coming back to that vision, because that's the thing you can sort of turn to and say, you know, that this is the trajectory. It's not the blueprint. It's the trajectory that you're sort of moving along. And if you keep coming back to that, I think at the end of the day, what you might actually get out of this, which hopefully you'll get out of this, is a community that's more aware of what the vision is overall, as well as a community that has a little bit more tools in the toolkit to deal with it, because you have some guidance from the work that we're going to do that will help you make some of those decisions. So at the end of the day, that's probably a very good win-win. You will actually have hopefully a community that's more aligned with the ideas of the master plan and the trajectory the community is moving in, so that when you are down the road doing those next steps of figuring out what are the lighting standards you really need to adopt, or what are the sidewalk, you know, what is the sidewalk prioritization, or what is the road improvement prioritization, you're having those conversations within this context of people having a better understanding of what the vision is and having some tools in your toolkit to express how to achieve that vision. That's kind of the overarching goal we've got.
Yeah, I think as a planning board member, I don't know, I find myself every time somebody comes before us for whatever specific purpose, we're always looking at that piece with an idea of how it should fit in. You know, to eventually have a a plan and finally have like developers or whatever come in with a plan that has to fit in our plan is gonna be, I mean, I always felt that we had we were the horse behind the cart, you know, in dealing with issues. And hopefully this will eventually get us to a point where we have a plan where we're in the driver's seat a little bit and feel more comfortable about it.
Yep. I think that's kind of our hope as we move this along, yeah, totally. Is there any questions?
The first survey, is that gonna do with these stakeholders?
No, the first survey, all the surveys are gonna be targeted to the broader public.
Okay.
So we're gonna try to get as much broad public input as possible.
They'll be on the website?
They'll be posted, a link will be available through the website. And I also understand from our conversation last week that there are potentially some email lists that we might be able to get access to through some of the realty people and such, that if we can get that information together, again, as broad a constituency as possible. And the demographic questions, so the leading questions, we'll gear down to figure out what this person is. Is it a guest that comes once a while, or is it a permanent year-round resident? You know, that kind of, we'll try to understand a little bit more about who they are as they're responding to the survey. But I would love, you know, even getting the list from the mountain, for example, if it's doable, would be great just to send out people that come to this place on a regular basis, because their impressions of the community in terms of both the vision and the sort of the trajectory, as well as the current conditions of the roadways and transit and getting around, mobility, that'd be great to understand. I mean, if people are taking the bus, for example, for something, if they respond back to the survey, they understand a little bit more why. Is it safety? Is it the schedule isn't right or whatever? That's good information to have, because that, you know, again, in and of itself, it's not terribly useful, but when you combine it with other information, it can really help us understand if there's a pattern here. And then just an observation I had made last week was, in some communities, I use Vail as an example. They did a few years ago, they did a whole reskinning of their buses and sort of up the quality level of some of their experiences of the actual buses themselves. And I can tell you that made a huge difference for them, because people were like, you know, this is really cool, but I feel comfortable riding in this. I feel it's like I'm not just sort of jumping on a jitney and, you know, hoping for the best here. And they actually had some improvements in ridership as a result of those sorts of things. So it's identifying some of those, you know, sometimes relatively small changes that we've found can have a profound effect. Communication of the routes is oftentimes one of the biggest low-hanging fruit, if you will, because people are like, well, I didn't know the bus ran over there. Well, why don't you know this? Is the map's not getting out, or is it not in the right place, or are they hiding them behind the cash register and no one sees them? It's, you know, sometimes it's relatively small things that can make a big difference. So, you know, I think having a input from as wide an aperture as possible is really good. And the transit's one of those areas where it really comes to roost, because, you know, you might find, for example, as you ask people why they're not riding the system, that residents aren't riding it for one reason, guests aren't riding it for another reason, and somewhere they overlap, and that's the place where you can look at policy and physical changes that might actually make a difference. If you can pull people this way and this way, you might actually get some positive results out of it. So it's really finding those opportunities, and I think we'll do that.
It was interesting that you had full participation in the sledding.
Yeah,
Buses.
I mean, I think to your point, it's a fairly unattractive bus. There's no lighting on the inside. I think if the buses were lit permanently on the inside at night, you can actually see it moving around. You can see it coming down the road. Other than that, it just looks like another dark set of headlights. So things like that, I think, you know,
Wi-Fi, I mean, you'd be surprised what the things that people have done just to expand the experience. Everything, as you guys know, as you guys live in a resort-oriented community, everything is about the experience nowadays. This is the buzzword in the sort of the resort tourism planning world, experience. And that experience starts before you get here with the website that you booked your trip on, all the way to the point where you're packing your bags up and leaving town. And I think what a lot of communities that we've been working with, Teton Village recently, we've just been finishing up a project with them, is trying to create in the community as much of a consistency in that experience as possible, so that there's not this sort of stark contrast between, hey, I had a great opportunity booking this, got to the place I was staying at, it was great, and then everything fell apart. You know, or my experience on the mountain was awesome, got off the mountain, and I couldn't figure out where to go from there. You know, it's that continuity in experience that really is critical. The balance point in communities that are also not just tourism destinations, but have real year-round residents and people who live here, again, is to find that balance point so that you're doing things that hopefully benefit everybody, not just the guest experience. We know that. That's a key aspect of that's how we think as a company. That's our sort of our world. We know that the best outcomes are the ones that actually find common purpose between owner, resident, taxpayer needs and broader tourism guest needs. It's absolutely critical. And for example, I understand like the bus goes to Portsmouth sometimes, Plymouth, excuse me, sometimes for transportation. Well, that's a situation, again, not knowing the details of that, but that's a situation where maybe there's that could be beneficial on a local basis that may not be fully realized at this point because people don't know what's happening. So it's one of those small examples of where and I think sometimes it takes outside perspective to see some of that stuff, because when you're living in the trenches, it's hard to, pull those threads together. But one of the things we try to look for is where are opportunities to take advantage of the guest resources that are being invested to make the guest experience as good as possible, and work in those resources be expanded or leveraged to make the owner experience better. And there are ways that can happen, and that's one of the things I think as we move this process forward, we'll be thinking about in terms of the recommendations we'll provide.
Well, I see the survey's gonna start on May 1st.
That's the window. We haven't,
Yeah.
obviously we're just getting initiated. The point is to work over the next 2 or 3 weeks to try to pull together, working with the steering committee to pull together the questions and get that information out, hopefully put it in that window of time. We have enough time in the overall project so that, and that's why they're sort of shown as windows, that if things need to slip around a little bit, we're not creating a real problem. The end date is good, and we're solid on that. We have some time within this to
I
move
was just
things around.
wondering if the new town website will be up and running by then.
By
May 1st?
likely not.
Likely not.
I heard a whip crack a second ago.
So you'd be doing a survey on the existing website?
Yeah, we'll just use the existing
Okay.
website, and when we migrate.
Yeah, I'll clarify that, yeah. So to be clear, the website at this point will have a link, just like it says, please take this community survey, click here.
Oh, okay.
We are preparing the online survey on our side, so that'll be a completely separate.
Oh, okay, so that's just
yeah.
a link on,
It's just a link, yeah. And that would basically be the same for a lot of the content. It'll basically be links on the website, your town website, that will link to our database, our server.
and what's the plan to get the word out so that people know that there is?
Well, it was in the quarterly water and sewer bill, a little blurb, watch, it's coming.
Yeah.
We're gonna continue to do that. We're gonna post it around town,
Okay.
post office, Jugtown, the usual places. We'll put it in the wigwag. We've got a list of the places that we're
Yeah.
gonna post it.
And you
And,
mentioned
some of
that
this
email
survey.
list?
What's that?
You mentioned that email list and,
Yeah, we've got an email list that Tom has. Jan Stearns has an email list for her blog
Yeah.
folks. We're gonna ask her to just advertise it, in her weekly
yeah.
happenings in the
Jan's
valley or
blog,
whatever it's
yeah.
called, and
Maybe
so there's.
we'll put it out, of course.
Yeah.
And the other, if I could, we have 10,000, so we'll
So there-
put out whatever you need.
We can
The
reach
other-
a lot of people.
The other major
Yeah.
list would be the lodges have their own list.
Yep,
Just
that's right.
Be aware. We
Yeah.
don't, lodges in our list are different, but lodges obviously will be,
Yeah.
and their guest experience will be a key
Yeah, that's
factor.
good.
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, you know, the good news is that the first survey hopefully gives us this little snapshot of thinking around all these different constituencies. Hopefully that also gets some buzz out there that this is going on, which is another intention of it, and that it's the second survey and that second process that actually is not more important, but is very helpful to have broad public opinion on, because that's the one you come back with and say, here's what we found, here's what we think are some opportunities to handle this situation, whether it's a poor connectivity in the pedestrian system or sidewalks that stop and don't go anywhere and people want to get from point A to point B and they can't, those sorts of things. And none of that goes on, I know, there's none of that.
Especially in wintertime.
Yeah, right, especially in wintertime. So the point is that'll be a lot of the questions on the second survey related to those situations. You know, like situation A, here are some suggestions. What are you thinking? What do you think about that? It's a good strategy. You know, what are the dimensions of that? Would you use this? Would you not use it? We can ask all sorts of questions related to that kind of thing. And then hopefully by having a longer process and having some continual outreach and some continual messaging that's coming out of this, by that second one you'll actually have a lot of public input. We're also having a public meeting in that phase too, which is another great avenue to increase awareness. So depending on how we finalize this thing, the survey might actually go beyond the public meeting. So we could start the survey ahead of time, let the survey continue after the public meeting to get people to participate, to get that feedback. So we have a lot of flexibility as we move along. And one of the things I told the steering committee we try to do in our work is to make sure we put out a roadmap, but it's not like it's got every single mile marker, you know, because everybody's busy. The summertime is always tricky with people taking vacations and, you know, sort of that. We know that. So it's really good to have a good overall sort of roadmap ahead of, mapped out, but leave some of the final decisions till you get a little further along.
And when will you be meeting with these stakeholders?
Well,
Hopefully he's gonna meet with Chris right after this.
Yeah,
And
we're gonna
the
talk.
Department heads today, I mean, we're starting that
Yep.
process now.
And that usually involves, I think as Wendy indicated, usually involves a planning board member, one of the steering committee members to help be your eyes and ears on the conversations. It's a structured conversation, typically goes for 35, 45, maybe an hour, depending on the person. Chris might be a little longer. We got a lot to talk about. But the point is, it usually goes for a block of time. I like to try to make them as conversational as possible, because the purpose of them is not to say, what do you want in policy? Give me exactly what you want. Obviously, some of that does come out, and that's fine. But the purpose of it is to understand perspective. What are your clients, customers, your constituents saying to you? What are your thoughts and issues? And also to build a relationship, because eventually, as we go back, as we continue this process, we're going to come up with some ideas, or we're going to come up with some roadblocks that we're sort of scratching our head saying, I'm seeing this disconnect between the use of the bus system and the people at the mountains. Here's what we think. Let's see if we can get with Chris and see what his reaction to that is. Is it doable? Is there a germ of opportunity there, or is it just something that, for whatever reasons we may not even know about, can't happen? Special use permit doesn't allow it, or it could be a number of things. So it's good to have. That's one of the reasons we sort of then, as you sort of look at that list of stakeholders, it's pretty broad. I mean, it covers lots of different issues, and Silver Streaks. What are your if we come back with some ideas about transit, how does that resonate with them? I mean, I'd love to know that once we have beyond just the initial conversation, we actually have something to come back with them. So the stakeholders can actually function kind of as a focus group, if you will, in some ways, and very informally. It's not like we sit down in a room and have formal structure for that, but it's really a kind of a part of the network process that you do. And I think it also serves this board well later on, because hopefully you're getting some of this feedback from people that are kind of important players in the situation. And as you're having that feedback, you're going to continue to have conversations, and then when this project's over and you're sort of taking some of the recommendations that we'll put out there to heart, you can continue to have those conversations because the work's not done. I mean, there's going to be some, okay, so what is it going to take to improve these buses, and what does that look like, and how does the community's needs and the mountain's needs, for example, blend? I mean, can we talk about that? Is there wayfinding or signage consistencies we can develop, or is there some shared investment in bus stops we can talk about? Whatever it is, I mean, who knows at this point. So that's another good byproduct of actually having, engaging people in conversation, engaging stakeholders in conversation, keeping them engaged as we go along, and then hopefully keeping those relationships with the steering committee and the planning board intact, so you can keep having more constructive dialogues.
Let's get started.
Sounds good.
We're just excited to get going.
Yeah, right. They're gonna use the Kirby Derby as an information to see a lot of people.
Exactly. Yeah, and from neighboring communities too.
Yeah,
Really
exactly.
good.
Yeah.
Sure.
We had a question.
Ray, at some point, I have 2 items to bring up.
Okay.
Whatever.
When he's around,
I'm
we should go to him all.
So whenever he can, whatever works.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Great.
Thanks, Chris.
You all set with me?
Yeah. No,
You might want to hang around for one thing I'm saying to bring up.
We never said
We need you, Mark.
No, you don't need.
We just like having you.
Can I?
Thank you.
Need and want.
I appreciate the thought.
I just want to
One
ask
of
Mark
you
one thing.
Yeah.
need to
Yeah, you
participate
need to go with
in,
Chris.
they're
Yeah,
setting
they're
up,
doing it now.
Yeah,
they're
where they
setting
have
up
to
the
go,
meeting
that's
now,
what
so,
should be first.
okay. Yeah, somebody needs to participate in that.
She's gonna
process.
send us a schedule.
I guess one quick thing from Mark after Ray.
Yeah, one second.
One
Hi, Ray.
quick thing.
Welcome back, by the way. Do you have any time?
Could you do a little research on the wording changes on that special civic? I'm kind of curious what
Sure.
happened 15 years ago.
I think he's referring, well, yes, I will look into it.
Because that
But
would help us,
I'm thinking that it was a little more recent than that,
That's
and it
what I
was the
thought.
discussion out at the north end, because it affected the tennis courts,
Yes.
remember? When we did the decisions on BBTS and whether what we were
We
gonna
did
make
see
special
one.
civic. Well, no, this was with
beyond that?
regards to the dormitories in special civic and rec,
Yeah.
and the whole discussion with
Yes.
BBTS.
Yeah.
So I think it was a little more recent than 15 years ago, but I also will go back and look at that.
But yeah, we made no changes. I remember we specifically decided to
Yep.
not touch it.
Well, exactly, but we had the discussion of what wording could we put in each of the zones, and which was gonna be rec
Yeah, we
and which was gonna
deleted
be
some.
special civic and, yeah.
We did. We eliminated certain words out of certain zoning
That's right,
areas.
that's right.
For
So I'll,
redundancy in some and.
we'll
Clarification.
summarize,
Yeah.
we'll summarize that. We have
Yes.
all the old,
Yes.
we have the, exactly, there was a discussion about that. So, but we will look at it.
Thanks.
And one thing I'd like to bring up that I was a little bit, I don't want to say shocked, but I was surprised. And I'm referring to the Green Peaks condos and the access for the emergency vehicles to the Black Bear parking lot, and how we treated all of that with the road and the bank and all that. Well, it was brought to my attention by people that live at Green Peaks that last year, in the summertime or non-snow time, that there's 4 to 6 vehicles a day that are driving right through that. Where we had taught, so I want to just bring that up as to, I don't know if we need some kind of low shrubbery that maybe the emergency vehicles, if they had to get through, could drive over. Or, we had put language in about bollards, and I'd hate to go there at this point in time, but I just want to bring it to everybody's attention that there is a problem.
Is this going through to the Black Bear?
Yeah, from Devon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, last year, there were construction vehicles going through there all the
No,
time.
no, no, these are people that specifically are there to gain access to the Black Bear parking lot. And they said, and I'm told by Mike and Tina that they said it's at least 4 to 6 a day. And I was a little bit shocked.
I think the intent was, when we looked at that there were gonna be some low bushes that,
Well,
when we talked to public safety, they said,
Well, I mean,
yeah, you
the-
drive over them and they don't.
We've got a grade, and we've got kind of like a paved walkway, and
But
so
Bob, there was no vegetation at all there all summer long.
no, I understand.
So it looked like a road
Well, there was
all
grass there.
summer.
It was grass.
There was something growing. I don't know.
Well, maybe at the very end, but I don't think that it looked hopefully the way it's gonna look this summer.
Okay, I mean, I'm
But
just letting everybody
we-
know
we
that
need to-
there is
we
a
need to
problem,
look- we
so
need to
we
watch
do
that.
need to address it somehow.
I think we talked more about the difference in gradient than we did.
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
that.
I think it needs a new.
Exactly.
I think it needs a
We
new
didn't
look
have
that.
We
vegetation
talked
at all.
about it being grass and the fact that it was going to be a change in elevation so that it shouldn't be apparent that it's a road. But I
Right.
don't think we talked about bushes or,
Yeah, we did, and it did look like it wasn't a road. I mean, I was out there in the summertime,
Yeah.
and it was obviously built so that it was not meant to be driven through.
right,
And that's why we had talked about
Okay.
what it would take with some low bushes, and public safety said that's fine, because they could just drive over the bushes in case
Right.
of emergency.
Yeah.
so like
Right.
juniper or something that's low.
Something that's hard to walk
Yeah.
through, something
Right.
that's hard for a low
Something
vehicle
that
to walk.
people know, if they're gonna drive through that, you really have to be, I mean,
You have to know you're doing wrong.
yeah.
Right.
Good way to put it. I mean,
Might I
right now they're
suggest
driving
Rosa
over
Ragosa?
a parent paved sidewalk,
Yeah.
so.
I think we should understand that, that if it bothers one resident, that should be sufficient to do something about it and not have to come up with all kinds of statistics to justify why we shouldn't.
Oh, I mean, that was part of the approval.
Yeah,
Definitely. It was definitely
absolutely.
discussed.
I mean, we spent a lot of time
A lot of
on
Right.
having that situation not happen. That's all I have for Mark's involvement. Oh, except one other thing, and I don't know if it's a town thing or whatever, but it's been a pet peeve of mine now for about a 2-week period. And that's Fairpoint Communication and internet service. And they are a major player in town, obviously, for internet service. We've got that and Time Warner, right? I think those are the two major
Yeah.
providers. Well, apparently from what I'm told now is that first of all, I would encourage everybody to test your speeds on the internet if you have Fairpoint, because you're not even getting 50% of what you're paying for. That's a separate issue. I mean, that's a contract between the individual and Fairpoint. But the major issue, I guess, is the reason for it is that, and I'll, in layman's terms, and Tom, you might have better knowledge, but the pipe stream that the information is coming from and going through is at 100% congestion. I was told that by a technician. I've had 2, maybe a third one coming. They come to say they can't fix anything because it's their equipment of the stream. I don't know how they're gonna fix it. And I've all the way up to a supervisor. I mean, when I call now, I'm on the pay attention, he's on the fast-paced track to get my situation resolved, I guess. But so I don't know what to do about it, except that it's apparently they need to either upgrade equipment or do something. You can't stream anything. You can't go to the town website and try to look at that streaming. Things start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. Even music. People are getting speeds that I've personally seen 1.0 megabytes, which is ridiculous. They're paying for 3. If you pay for 7, you're getting 2.5. You almost can't do anything on the internet with those kinds of speeds. So I'm trying to get everybody in town that has Fairpoint to look at their speeds, and if they're not happy with their speeds, to call Fairpoint about it. I mean, the squeaky wheel's gonna get the grease, so.
DSL?
Yeah. And Fairpoint only offers, I guess the plans are 3 megabytes per second or 7. I mean, that's what you can purchase. So that's the fastest you're gonna get. But if you purchase 7, you're lucky to get 3. And if you purchase 3, you're lucky to get 1.8.
I didn't get one.
You didn't get 1. Yeah.
It was less, it was a fraction of one.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely terrible. So I just want to make people aware about it, and if you can call or whatever.
It's the same thing
It's
out
the
of
same
town
thing,
too.
it's
I
the
mean,
same thing out of
in
town,
Camden.
we're getting half of what we pay for with Time Warner, so
Really.
they're stealing from all of us.
Well, but the point is if you know.
Time Warner's better than Fairpoint.
It's a common misconception that you pay for 3, 5, 7. If you actually read the contract, you pay for up to.
Yeah, but
So at any point in time, you're getting a fraction with a maximum capacity of potentially that.
Fairpoint supervisors told me that the guarantee from Fairpoint, or supposedly, was 80% of what you're paying for. Hardwired to you in DSL,
Yep.
hardwired to the DSL, not wireless.
Right.
But still, wireless or hardwired is, to me, it's not going to be that much of a difference. And 80% of, if you're paying 3,
2.5.
or
2.5.
yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what I did, and it hasn't made that big of a difference yet, but I'm still hollering and screaming. I cut a deal to upgrade to 7. They agreed at a reasonable, reduced rate, and I said, there's no way you're going to give me 7. I understand that, but if I can get 5, I'll be happy.
Right.
You know, but it's not happening yet, so I'm still working on it.
Well, Bob, as you had said, a big part of it is their own infrastructure.
Right.
So, if they sell 100 people 1 megabyte service, they've sold 100 megabytes of service, right?
Right.
But if basically the pipeline that feeds the community can carry 10 megabytes of service, right? And then all 100 people go on at the same time, they'll have exceedingly, outuse the capacity of the pipeline itself. So everyone will get 1/10 of 1 megabyte of service.
I understand that, and I told her, I said, look, it's mud season. There's nobody around but the residents. I mean, academy kids aren't all over their computers. The guests aren't here on weekends, and you've got like an extra, whatever the guests, 2,000, 3,000 people, and they're using Wi-Fi all over, and they're doing all their internet stuff at their condos. When I look at my connection on my computer, I see all my neighbors. There's like 10 of them. Well, there's only 3 of us there using it out of the 10. So if you use that percentage, to me, and that should be more room in the pipes right now for the information to be going. I don't know if that's the way it works, but so, and it's still at a, and I told Fairpoint, and this will be the last thing I'm going to say about it because we'll get on to some other stuff, but something drastically happened in the last month or 2. That's when I noticed stuff really going south. I don't know what happened in and around the area. One technician, the one that told me about all of this stuff finally said, Waterville Valley's had the problem since last summer. And he said, in Plymouth, we just upgraded Plymouth with this XYZ, whatever piece of equipment or equipment stuff. And I said, well, when is Waterville or wherever we go to going to get it? And they can't tell me. So, but one supervisor at Fairpoint did tell me, she was trying to put it in different words, and I said, you mean the squeaky wheel gets the grease? She said, yeah. And somebody else at Fairpoint said, well, the internet used to be, people used to just do email.
Okay,
And
so one comment.
Right.
New seasons on Netflix, and one question. So, as a community, what can we do about it? How do we most effectively form a squeaky wheel? Because we need better internet.
Well, you're talking about 2 different internet technologies, right? Fairpoint's providing DSL, and Time Warner Cable is providing cable internet.
Yeah, I mean for all the providers.
Well, there's limitations, right? So your DSL, your Fairpoint line, will never, even under 100% ideal circumstances, be as fast as Time Warner Cable's internet service, and that's by definition of the technology, DSL versus cable. That said, if you want to, be the squeaky wheel, I guess there'd have to be some
voice from maybe the local government and the community at large with regards to, Mark, you might jump in here, with the licensing arrangement?
Right, the Time Warner Cable franchise agreement says that they will provide X service to the community. We can check that and see if they are. I mean, there are ways to measure it. We can tell them we want them to prove that they are providing it and provide us with the reports. So that's the, as far as Fairpoint is concerned, we don't have any licensing or franchising with them. They're controlled by SEC or whoever controls FCC.
Could the town not
so-
generate a letter to Fairpoint just stating that there seems to be a town-wide problem? Is there
Sure,
asking them
we
if they
can-
can do something about it?
We can, but, yeah.
I mean,
if
at least
that
at the-
helps be the squeaky wheel, then sure.
At least now they understand that it's a larger than,
Yep.
you know, I mean, I've gotten 3 or 4 or 5 people to call Fairpoint in the last week.
Mhm.
And I mean, I don't know if they'll even bother doing anything about it, but I just think.
It's a numbers game, and when
And
you,
if they see a picture of a
when you-
town asking, you know,
Right.
is there anything you can do for the people in town?
Yeah.
You know, that sort of thing.
Send me an email that
Okay.
I can print out, bring into the meeting. We'll get a board vote to write the letter. You know, that way we've got a roadmap that can show, hey, the board got these comments from the general public. They want you to know that the community is not happy, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
We can definitely do that.
All right.
But I don't.
I
you
mean,
know,
we have no
and you
power over
telling
them,
me
I
is
understand.
fine. But I really think that if we can send emails with the letter and say this is something that we're hearing from the community at large, it's gonna carry more weight. And then if it's just a piece of equipment that can upgrade things, great, we'll hopefully keep pushing them till we get it.
Good. That's all I have.
So where should unhappy people send their emails?
Unhappy people should send emails either to Town of WV or to WV Manager. We'll print them out, we'll
Okay.
bring them into the next meeting.
Okay.
I just went back in the minutes and looked about that Green Peaks, Gorwood Way, Black Bear, and there's a letter in here dated April 26th of 2013 from Cantlin,
Yeah,
stating the great difference of about 2 feet between Gorwood Way and the Black Bear parking has raised question about how to best achieve the goal for the speed bump that is part of the plans approved by the planning board. The speed bump can still be constructed in the travelway of the parking lot, but it may no longer be necessary because the transition between the lot and Gorwood Way. The existing conditions have been reviewed in the field by Bob Wiles, Matt Hesser, Chris Hodges, and Jim Mayhew, and myself. After consideration of alternatives, the following solution is proposed for your review. Lightly topsoiled and seeded the existing gravel connection between Gorwood Way and the Black Bear Lodge parking lot. The connection is steep enough to discourage pass-through traffic, but this will still accommodate emergency access. Add a 4-foot paved connection of pedestrian traffic for pedestrian traffic. Upon request by the town or the Black Bear Lodge, the Waterville Company agrees to add the speed bump per the design to the traveled way of parking lot. Then I have in written notes, if berm didn't work, then perhaps a split rail fence or balusters. And that's,
The ballers are in the minutes of the meeting,
Yeah.
that was part of the approval or.
but that was addressed to you, Ray, way back when.
So I, at this point, I'm not in favor of, I don't think putting ballers right away, but maybe something else. Yeah, I mean, they did put the
There's also-
paved
I
sidewalk.
also have minutes
but-
from another.
no, don't worry about the minutes, just that letter
Okay.
is,
Yeah.
we're gonna go out there with
Yeah.
Bob and
Okay,
Bill and Jim and Chris. We'll have a good time, we'll have a little party out there. It's gonna be a nice day today.
Bring a
Maybe
picnic table,
picnic.
and when you
Yep.
leave, you could just leave the picnic table right there so the cars can't go through.
It's still snow covered? Probably still in the.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
Foot
this
of
is,
snow.
Yeah.
and if this gets brought up again at the May meeting, I'll be on vacation, so just bring my passion to the issue.
Okay, so where are we? We finished with all the
I'm,
previously floor
yeah,
stuff?
I'm done, well, I'm done anyway.
We have some communication. Pass it up this
Okay.
way. If I split it, we got annual spring planning and zoning conference on Saturday, May 3rd.
I have the registration information for that as well, that came a little
Yeah,
after,
you-
but I had those already
You
copied.
have the agenda too.
I do, I
It's
can
at,
forward that around to everybody.
it's at the Mountain View Grand Resort in
Ooh,
Heidelberg.
Nice.
Saturday, first Saturday in
You
May,
pay,
I believe.
you pay for overnights? Weekends and meals?
How about dinner?
I'm
You
there.
have this.
If you all stay in the same room. One
That
room.
would be nasty.
I don't think that'll
That
work
would
at
be
all.
nasty.
One room.
We can stay in the dining room or the bar.
I like the bar. We can get dinner and drinks there real easy.
Just in case anybody's interested, do you have the agenda for it?
Yeah, that would be good.
It's with the
Yeah,
registration
'cause they
material.
might just go up for the view and play golf.
There you go.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Snow might not be gone by then.
No, it
True.
won't be, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
So
Whitefield.
they must know that.
And maybe you can email that out so people can make their decision.
That's always the coldest place.
It's got a
I thought it
beautiful
was
view.
at noon usually.
No, they move it around.
Oh, they do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been in Manchester.
Managers are a little bit better, they go in June, so.
Oh.
Yeah.
They've actually had it here one
Well,
year.
golfing's back.
They should
Yeah.
have it here another year.
Yeah, they did it here at the conference center.
Of course, they put all town managers in one room too, huh?
They do.
They do, and no food.
And surprisingly, no one's tried to blow the place up. while we're there.
Anything else?
No.
We have a motion?
I make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So you're all set.